Across 18 campuses or so, we can't have the biggest and baddest of everything, even though we try. So, but that's me. This is a guy I work with regularly in a lot of nearly every one of our projects. This is Chris Rayburn.
Hi guys, I'm Chris Rayburn. I'm the owner of Summit Integrated Systems. We're a systems integrator based out of Colorado. We service the whole country, coast to coast, working exclusively with churches like Greg. And we've worked with Greg at campuses all over the country. I've been doing this for, well, I guess full-time since 2001. Over that time, I've probably helped 75 to 100 churches with tech systems, ranging from small 100-seat rooms to very large rooms and everything in between.
So when we look at this session today, designing on a dime, what we're really, most of you guys, if not all of you, are going to be, if you're not already involved in some form of either renovation or new build project. If you're not doing it now, I'm hoping that you'll be doing it, that your church will be doing that in the near future. So there's some assumptions that we're taking into play today that you guys either are in the middle of this or that you're going to be in the middle of this, and that there are, we're trying to stay, we're not talking multi-million-dollar projects here. We're 350,000 and less,
sure. Probably
closer to 100,000. But we're going to show you right here. It's just a reference. This is one of the projects we just finished up this last quarter, first quarter of this year. It's our broadcast campus. Basically, what we had here was we had a fixed budget of $1 million to do the entire AVL of that. So we had to get real creative on it. We had to get real creative on what equipment we were going to use. The timelines we were going to have to do it in, because it was going to be we still had to have services in this room while we were doing the project. So we had to get real creative on what the temporary setup looked like, because we were still broadcasting from here as well. So all this was going on behind a curtain.
And there was construction happening at the same time as well. It wasn't just a technology upgrade. We were moving walls, changing the stage, moving screens, changing screens. Blowing
out a concrete stage. It was a big mess. But as we talk about this today, one of the things, everything we're going to talk about with designing on a dime, it comes back to this, which is it all comes back to the vision. Everything that we do, it starts with the vision. So if you don't know what the vision and mission of your church or your pastor is, that's square one. You've got to know that. You just got to know that if you're going to be a contributing team player on your team.
And all of the dollars and cents spent on the project should be focused around executing that vision. So I think, identifying that vision is certainly the first part of the process.
Right. So the first part of this that we've got to talk about is, what is our expectation? When we look at the vision, we know, like for Life Church, our vision is to lead people to be fully devoted followers of Christ. That's the vision. That's the mission of our church. When it came to this project, I'm going to be referencing this OKC project quite a bit because it's fresh on my mind, and it was a big thing where I had a lot of direct conversations with Craig Rochelle, my senior pastor. He had his hands all over the project from day one, from the point of coming in and going. We had the drawings of what we thought the stage should look like, and he grabbed them and he took a pen and started drawing what he wanted his speaking area to look like. So we had that. His involvement from day one was huge. So
it's the stage he's on every week and broadcasting from, so he had a lot of involvement on this campus, which in Greg's situation, a lot of the campuses Craig may not have quite as much involvement in. So
he has relatively no involvement in a campus launch. And so when it comes to our major projects where we're dealing, I'm figuring most of you guys are dealing directly with your senior pastor and what his expectation is of this final deal. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah.
So when we talk about expectation, we've got several things that we've got to address. First thing of it is, these are supposed to be circles, by the way. It's,
looks like an oval.
It's squashed. But one of them is cost.
Yeah, and I think the important thing here is to take that vision and then try to ask the right questions, identify the right pieces, determine how much it's going to cost to execute what they're asking you to do, see if you guys have budget for that, see if that's even a reality. Time frame is huge. We've had projects that are as quick as 11 days from start of project to end of project, from design through execution, and we've had projects that take years. So, you really have to approach it differently when you've got a long period of time versus a short period of time.
You got to ask the questions to clarify that, because in the end, if between the cost and time, if like with our project, we knew we had a fixed budget, so it wasn't one of those things that evolved. But as we started into this project, we noticed that there were added things that were probably expected but weren't communicated. So the expectation from tech, the first question was, well, what's it going to cost to put in a new PA? Well, I had done a little bit of research on the front side of what we needed to do, but I said, well, it's going to be $450,000, and he's like, okay, well, what's it going to cost to do this? And so in his mind, he's starting to rack up numbers of what it's going to cost, but I didn't have really the concrete stuff up front. So that was just kind of an assumption on my part.
It's kind of a catch-22 because you have to ask the questions, draw the information out, and have a number then, but you can't really have a number until you get all of that information. So it's a bit of a dance sometimes. Right,
because as things develop, things are going to change. Plans are going to change. Costs are going to increase. For the most part, I don't know that we've ever had one that's actually gone down.
Copper's going to increase. Projectors are going to decrease. And at the end, it's probably a wash to some extent. So
right. So with your expectations of tech, you've got to ask the questions. Well, what are we trying to do here? Is this a broadcast campus? Is it a youth building? Are we? What are we trying to do? What equipment do we have to make this work? What's the expectation? Are we looking for flash and trash, from a lighting side, or are we looking for just a key wash? Are we just, what are we really looking for here?
And it's great during this period to maybe take the leadership and the people that are kind of clarifying the vision and take them to tour some other facilities and get some input. And the more time you spend identifying what the expectations are up front, the better the project's going to go.
Right, because I know with our situation, with Pastor Craig, the way he travels around, he does Catalyst, he goes and speaks at other churches fairly regularly, and he's been on stages, from North Point to Fellowship Church to Willow. He's been in all these stages, and he comes back and he goes, well, that's what I want. Well, our room was a square box. It's like
120-foot square.
Right. Yeah. And I'm like, well, that's not the room that we have. It wasn't designed for that. So I had to start digging and asking the questions of, what is he really trying to accomplish? What does he like? What does he want? What does he like about this room? This stage. What are the things the components, the individual components, to try to put together that list of ideas, so that we can build what in his mind he's thinking is going to be what he's going to be comfortable on speaking from.
Yeah.
So the next phase of that is your execution. Once you kind of determine what your expectations are, kind of get an idea, then you start chasing the tail of, the execution side.
Yeah, and this is probably where we'll spend the majority of our time, and this is where you really save your money. There's several components to the execution. Really the first is the approach. What are you going to take? There's a couple of traditional approaches out there. One where, a design bid build, where you'd hire a designer and then you'd put the design out to bid and then you'd hire an installer. And then there's the design build approach, where you hire the same company for design and installation. And then there's kind of the hybrid approach, which is how we usually work with Life Church, where we handled some design, they handled some design, we handled some installation, and these guys handled some of the installation as well.
Right, and y'all are about to start handling more of the installation, by the way.
I'm sorry?
So y'all are about to start handling more of the installation, by the way.
Yeah.
So from the approach side, that's one thing. You got to determine how you're going to get it done. You got to, in doing that, you got to, figure out who are you going to have do it? You know, pick a vendor. Who is somebody that you trust, or that you know has worked with other people, that you've seen their work and you feel like it's quality, like they did a quality job.
Yeah, and I think when picking a vendor, it's important that you find a vendor that really aligns with your vision and with your values and what you guys are trying to achieve. It's when selecting a contractor or designer, I think you'd look for a lot of the same things that you'd look for when you're hiring somebody. Do they fit the team? Do they fit the personalities? Do they fit the vision?
Is there chemistry?
Yeah, is there chemistry there? Do you like them? Do they get it? Do they understand what you're trying to get at? And I think, lots of people have stories about hiring the wrong contractor, and it's something you want to avoid when possible.
Yeah, and also, can they do what you want them to do?
Yeah.
Do they have a track record of being able to produce the end product that you're wanting in your room? That's probably a bigger piece of it.
Yeah, touring around and looking at systems that the contractor's installed or the designer has designed, and checking out their work and seeing if you like what they've done, and seeing how they've interacted with their clients and how they've listened and adapted their ways to meet what the client's trying to find.
Yeah, and find people who have said that they don't want to use them again, and find out why they don't want to use them again.
Yeah, it's a pretty small community. You start asking around about any contractor and you'll find people that have worked with them pretty quick.
Yeah, leverage your relationships within within the people who are here at WFX, other tech directors, other churches, other relationships that you have. The church tech leader
network.
Yeah, network is huge on that. If you throw it out there and say, hey, have you ever worked with so-and-so? You're probably going to get 15, 20 replies of, yeah, here's my experience with them, or I know so-and-so did, why don't you contact them? It's a very healthy environment for those discussions to take place.
And don't be afraid to look nationally for the right fit in a designer or an installer. I think majority of designers and installers work nationally, and the local company may or may not be the right fit for you. Chances are you have a bigger pool to pull from and a better fit if you start looking nationally.
Probably a better price too.
Yeah, very, very often. Yeah, the travel expenses involved in typical projects are usually a fraction of the cost of the entire project and really don't affect the overall price that much.
So then you've got we move around to the toys or tools. That's it's kind of a catch in tech. We always want the latest and greatest and biggest and baddest, and we've got to determine is what we're looking for a toy or is it a tool?
Yeah, you really need to ask the question, does this product achieve the vision? Is this excessive, or is it achieving the vision? And usually you can find a product that achieves the vision, and then for twice that amount you can find one that has a lot of bells and whistles and other things that you may or may not need. Unless you need them for future growth or expandability, you're usually better off slimming down and saving money.
Yeah, it's good enough.
Yeah.
For most of the time it is. You don't have to have I don't know. You don't have to have this massive console if all you need are 16 channels,
Yeah, and you had an example of something on the OKC project, the projector.
Yeah, okay, so with the OKC project, we've got, basically it's a 60-foot hole, in the middle of the stage, that in my initial thought, I wanted to put a 40-foot screen in there. Well, to put a 40-foot screen in there, I needed one of the Christie 25K projectors. We started looking at it. Then we actually needed to stack two 25s to adequately cover the projector or the screen. The total cost for just that one little piece of the project ended up coming close to $250,000, if not more. No, it was more than that.
It was
a lot more than that. So it was expensive. So we had to realize we had to make some cuts there to realize what's going to be good enough. Because the reality is we were only using it for three services, that center screen, for a video message. So when we realized how many actual people were going to be watching that service, it didn't make sense to spend that much money because the return on investment wasn't there. So what we ended up doing was getting we started off with 2 Panasonic 8300, so 9600 lumen projector.
We downsized the screen.
We downsized the screen to a 26-foot screen and a daylight screen. So we spent $10,000 on the screen, and we spent
not even that on the projector. Around that.
I don't remember how much we spent on the projectors,
Yeah.
but we saved a substantial amount of money. And we've actually gone down now. We're using one of the 8300s on the center screen, and it looks awesome. Because the amount of people who are in the room who actually watch that service on video, it's good enough, and good enough is good. It was good enough for that situation.
It would have been great to have a larger screen, to have a real big, bright image, but it just wasn't necessary. And trimming saved quite a bit of money to use elsewhere in the project.
Right, because overall, technically, through this project, we did the entire technical part of the project for $683,000, which was. We're very pleased with the outcome of it, and we were able to save a lot of money by scaling back to go good enough is good enough. Do you want to cover the next one?
The cut rate audio products.
Yes. Don't buy crap.
It's really the worst money that you can spend is on a product that you're going to throw away. We say buy a product that's good enough, but when you cut too many corners and you spend not quite enough money, you end up with a product that you're just going to throw away eventually, or more likely put in a closet or a cage or somewhere on the facility, and it's just wasted money. It's better to spend a little too much than a little too little, because a little too much you get some extra features you may never use. A little too little, if it doesn't execute the vision, it's going to be replaced.
Or it may not be expandable. And if you're going to buy something that's like that, that's cheap like that, we buy those types of things for our kids' rooms and stuff, because if a $250 audio console dies, well, it's not worth replacing or repairing it. We usually throw it away and just buy another one, because we're going to get, by that time, I'm sure it's extended its lifespan, or its expected lifespan. So,
yeah, I would say also beware of the jack of all trades product that does everything that $300,000 worth of gear would do, but all for $5,000. Usually, that product falls under this cut rate audio product category. It's not gonna do it for you. It's not gonna be user friendly. Jack of all trades, master of none, usually.
So we talk about scalability as another factor in execution. How many of you guys are doing multi-site? Anybody?
How many of you are planning on doing multi-site at some point? Yeah.
How many of you guys have your main auditorium and you have a youth room? Pretty much everybody?
Or more than one room, yeah.
Right, or more than one room. We talk about scalability. We talk about what can you buy that's going to be, in essence, a backup for your main room. So if you have let's say you have a Grand MA for your main lighting desk in your main room. Do you have something that's scalable that if that thing crashes, you've got something you can still operate your weekend service from? My experience with that was we had that happen one time. We had one of the original MAs, and it died. We had to run over to the youth room, and we just happened to have planned on scalability for that, and we put in an MA Lite in the youth room. Now, while we spent more money than we probably really needed to have that, it saved us on the weekend. We were able to execute the weekend and not miss a beat by having that built in.
And it's easier to train volunteers when you have a similar product in all of your venues. And in Greg's situation, a similar product from campus to campus. If he has a front of house engineer call in sick at one campus, he can pull somebody from another campus. And chances are, in his environment, you could jump from one system to the next, and things are very close to identical.
Right, and when we talk scalability too, we're talking going from, we're not just one campus we have to focus on. There's, in essence, 15 to 18 campuses that we have to support. So when we talk about projection, while we would like to do, a really expensive projector there, we decided to go with a lesser expensive projector in our main experience rooms, because when I look at what we currently have in inventory right now, I have 75 projectors that are in use at this moment. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
In and of itself.
It's a lot of lamps.
Yeah.
It's a lot of filters to clean.
Maintenance is expensive. It just gets expensive when we've got to think scalability on that size. Now, you may be thinking, well, I've only got one room. Well, who's to say that tomorrow your pastor doesn't call and say, hey, I want to open up 5 campuses in 2 weeks. I talked to a church a month ago, and it's in Seattle. And 2 weeks from that day, they were launching 5 campuses in one day. So you talk about scalability. I mean, that was a decision that they had made 6 weeks prior to that. So when you think scalability, you have to anticipate what the future is. You can't think of just the here and now.
Absolutely.
Then we got the issue of paying for it when it comes to execution as well.
Usually Greg likes to write a personal check to pay for the systems at Life Church TV. And, it works well.
From that slush fund that I have built up from being a church tech director.
Before he was a church tech director.
I was in student ministry. It wasn't any better.
Yeah, so you've got to ask the question, how are we going to pay for this? Are we going to finance? Are we going to lease? Are we going to rent? Are we going to pay cash? What does that look like? One of the important things to consider is if it's not a product that you're going to use, if you're only going to use something twice a year, you need to be renting. If it's 3-4 times a year, you need to be renting. If it's something you're going to use 20 times a year, yeah, you should probably be purchasing that. You can probably speak a little bit to how Life Church handles purchasing.
I would say, when I think of, from a renting side, I think of lighting specifically, because there's so many things that change very, very often. Develop a relationship with a vendor that you can, if you can't afford to buy your entire intelligent rig, look at leasing it or having some sort of thing where you pay X amount of money, per month, per quarter, or whatever, and you have lights that you just kind of cycle through. So if you want to change your look, you can swap those out. And you're not spending all the money up front. You just have, and that way they're responsible for the maintenance side of it too, and it's not your responsibility. But install the skeleton, the bones of your system. All your infrastructure. Own that. Don't waste your money in renting that.
Yeah, and spend the money on the infrastructure and hold off on the things that you can add later and add at any point in time. Moving lights, light fixtures in general, I think if you can always add on in the future as long as the infrastructure and dimming and power is in place. Front of house consoles, for that matter, we very often reuse the front of house console from a church, and then a year later, 2 years later, when they have the money, they'll upgrade their console.
And if you can't afford to buy something new, there's a huge used market that's out there. B-stock stuff. I mean, there's a lot of money to be saved by doing your research and look. Don't necessarily bite on the first thing that comes across your nose. To use a fishing analogy, just definitely do your research. Look out there. There's a lot of guys that have a lot of gear to sell. We have a lot of gear to sell that we've actually pulled out of our campuses that is sitting in a warehouse. We have millions of dollars of stuff that we won't use again. Boxes of switchers that are SD that we won't use again because we've transitioned everything to HD. And if you're only doing a small sort of thing that you're all right with doing SD, by all means, look and do it. You can save a lot of money. You don't have to be HD in today.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to spending money, if you don't have the money to properly execute the vision, then you should probably save your money and wait until you're at a point that you can properly execute the vision, because otherwise you're really just throwing money away.
Yeah, and just scale back your execution. Don't change the expectation. Maybe change just the way you're going to do it. You know? So the next part of this is really the bigger part of it, which is it's the long-term piece of this, which is the support side.
These are some great things to think through before you buy any gear. Really, who's going to support this and who's going to handle service? Are you going to do service agreements or maintenance agreements? Do you have the money to support this? We did a project recently, and we figured out that their annual lamp budget was going to have to be $25,000 spent on lamps every year. So, that sort of thing needs to be considered up front before you buy gear that you can't support.
Yeah, and, so we ask the question, who's going to do it? Are you going to do it? Or are you going to have a service agreement with somebody to do it? You're going to pay a contractor to come and do it? There's a lot of times that we have a guy that we use for a lot of the preventative maintenance stuff on our lighting rigs that, we'll have to we budget a certain amount a quarter, and he goes out and he covers, he does the PM on the certain lighting rigs.
That's the best way to get it done, too. I mean, all too often, if it's left to the church team, you guys are so busy with so many other things that it gets overlooked to the point that something breaks or something fails due to lack of maintenance.
And there are times, too, that we end up, when I say I have to reference our lighting stuff because it's the stuff that's, a lot of it is older, and so we're having to do more preventative maintenance on it just to keep it alive. But a lot of times we'll send it back to the manufacturer and let them fix it and send it back. We may be down a light for a month or so, but we know that it's fixed correctly the first time. Then we don't have to waste our money again.
Yeah, and especially for you multi-site guys, it's certainly key to keep some inventory, some backup inventory on hand. One of the things that Life Church is really good about doing is standardizing on product and getting an extra one to keep in inventory, identifying the products that are going to fail more often and keeping those around.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. If you've got, I would suggest keeping a spare projector in the closet, or like we call it the cage. Amplifiers. We actually keep some consoles in there. Now, most of our campuses use an M7, but we keep some LS9s in spare just in case something goes down. They can still get by and do it. And some of them were like just, it's like the LS9 16, so it may not even be the full 32 channel console, but it can get them through a weekend if they have to have it.
Absolutely.
The other part of that is the how. How are you going to do it? Is your team going to do it? Are you going to do it specifically? The support side, and when? I mean, most of you guys. How many guys are the tech person for your church? How many guys are a volunteer? How many guys work multiple jobs? Your time's limited. Absolutely. When are you going to do it? Your family wants you at home. I know that I regularly get calls from my wife going, when are you going to be home? Last night I got a call from my daughter who's 10. She's like, Daddy, I need you to help me with my homework. And so I'm doing that over FaceTime last night. Your time is in high demand. So people want, not only does your church want you, but your family wants you. Your equipment needs some attention, so everybody's pulling. Where are you going to find it? The best thing for me to say is, if you can afford it, outsource it, plan it into your projects, plan the service part of it into your projects, fix that into your budget, even if it's 10% of the overall budget.
Yeah, you guys have a 6-person team that really maintains and handles service issues for audio-video lighting at your 16 campuses. So, I mean, it definitely takes time. It keeps you guys busy pretty full-time.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So this is the gist of our presentation, and we really wanted to do this to just kind of hit on this stuff so that you guys could ask questions, because we know there are probably more questions out there than we can actually hit in this topic.
Yep.
So I just want to open it up to you guys for any questions that you may have regarding any issues that you guys are dealing with your systems. Okay.
What corners should you not cut when designing on a dime? Infrastructure. You need, at minimum, you need the infrastructure to achieve the vision. You may not have all the other pieces in place, and you might not have money for all the other pieces, but spend money on conduit, on technical power, on the infrastructure pieces, and anything that's really permanent in the facility, dimming, speakers. The pieces that are going to be hard and expensive to change later. Room acoustics, another one.
Yeah, and the other piece of that is where do you not cut? The things that you need to make sure that you can do is make sure that your pastor can be heard clearly, and that if you're doing video, he can be seen. So, or your scripture can
kind
be
of
on.
Important.
Those are your main two things. If the message is accomplished, everything else is subsidiary to that. So prioritize your message up top and what your pastor needs. Make sure his needs are met, and then you can cut on other stuff that goes beyond that.
Yeah. Any other questions? We must have answered all the questions.
Either that or we have some shy people. Anything? Go ahead. I mean, we're here, so
Yeah. For maintenance or for a new system installation? Both. So how do you determine a budget, a realistic budget for the system? Yeah, that's a very difficult question to answer, and it just depends on the needs of the church. We've had churches that we can install a system for as little as $75 per seat, up to $1,000 per seat, just depending on room size and what they're trying to achieve and what the vision is. Does it need to be big and flashy, or do they want it to be simple and clean and no frills? Why don't you give some examples of your campuses?
Okay, so for our normal campus that we install, install included, our systems cost $350,000.
And that's a campus location. So on the video side of things,
that is not our broadcast. That is not what you saw here.
No.
That is not our broadcast campus. But that system includes it's a stereo system with a
digital console, quality amplifiers.
It's HD.
But it's really half of a video system. They don't have the capture end in that.
Right. It's only playback.
Yep.
But we figure out what the needs are. What are we trying to accomplish? And we design around that. So for the campus, since the main conduit for playing the message back is video, so we invest in the video side. We have a quality audio system that's good enough. It's not
over the top, but it's good enough.
Right.
But you have 3 screens with HD projectors with a good image. That includes a satellite downlink as well.
So when it comes to that, we know what that cost is going to be for us per campus. Then when it comes to maintenance, we know we're going to have projector lamps, maybe some wireless mics that break during the year. If in the kids' room, we know we're going to have to replace their little cheap headsets that we let them use. So we have what those costs are, but over the span of a year, for one of my campuses that I have to support, is usually somewhere in the range of, I don't know, maybe $10,000. It's
if they shut their projectors off when they should.
Right. If we don't have to replace projectors, which, or if they don't get hit by lightning or something like that,
Yes, stuff comes up, unfortunately.
Yes.
And how large of a room is that?
Let's call it average about 850.
And we can we can go from 600 to 1,000 seats at one of his locations for that same amount of money.
The room that we showed up here is about a 2,000 seat room, and so, but because it was a broadcast campus and because it's Craig's home turf, the investment was made there. Yeah. That's a one-off. That's an anomaly in our organization. The size of the campus, everything about it it doesn't happen anywhere else. Everybody else pretty much has the same thing.
Yeah. But it was still designing on a dime, even on a larger scale. But it was designing on a dime. For that campus, their front of house console was an SC48. They wanted a D show, but an SC48 was good enough. That's what they get. Yep. So yeah, we demoed 4 different line arrays for that project. We brought them into the room and flew them, and they ended up picking the least expensive speaker option for that room. The least expensive one we presented.
Better,
Yeah.
So
and the more expensive, the nicest, most expensive option definitely sounded better. I think almost everybody would agree.
Right.
It just wasn't worth the extra money. It didn't. The less expensive system still executed the vision with the expectations and met the expectations.
Yeah.
You can.
You can, but you don't want to.
Yeah. So what is it? What's the budget for streaming and cameras?
And that varies too, depending on which technology you use. I mean, you can do something as simple as Ustream. While the quality is not great, you can use it. I mean, you can go all, high vision, Streambox. There's all kinds of technologies out there that range from the most simple thing to
and on the video end,
$100,000.
of course, you can spend a couple $1,000s or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it really depends if you want a single camera or multiple cameras, and switching and lenses are huge, especially if you're talking about a far distance. That's
your glass will cost
one.
as much as the camera body sometimes. I mean,
yes,
it's really kind of scary.
Yep. So can't quickly answer
it's
that
kind
one
of a
for you.
Pandora's box there.
Yeah. Maybe we could give a range. Sure. So you've got a 5-year-old building that was installed with limited infrastructure, and you're wondering what step. Okay. So you're wondering what order to upgrade in. You have to look at where the pain is and then address that issue. That could be lighting, could be audio. If it was a traditional room originally, it could be room acoustics. There could be a lot of different things. So it just depends on where the system's lacking the most. And I would address what's keeping you from executing the vision with excellence.
Yeah, I mean, because any one of those can be. I mean, it just depends on the weekend, right? I mean, but if your pain is in lighting and you really want to have more, you want to create a different environment, then I would say lighting is a place to start. Just because you can, I don't know, probably the wrong term to say manipulate, but you can manipulate emotion. With lighting, you can change the total environment using lighting. Environmental projection, you can do that if you've got some older projectors. You can do that for relatively nothing. It'll add a nice environmental piece to the overall room, especially if you're trying to change from a traditional side to a contemporary side, and you're trying to do it in a matter of minutes. Well, that may help you. LED will help you. The LED lights, the cost of that's come way down. You can do that for relatively inexpensive, and you can add a lot of color and wash, a lot of color to the room and space by using LED. And it doesn't cost you as much on the power side either, because there's literally no draw to it.
Is the message being heard clearly from the audio system? Is good enough. So really, it's the visual piece. Yeah. And do you have cameras in the room? No cameras at this point. Yeah, I mean, so environmental projection might be a great affordable option for really making a dramatic increase with not a whole lot of money.